Yes, but now if your name is Markwayne Mullin and you're a Republican senator from Oklahoma, you can around the same time frame purchase a bunch of Chevron stock, which has outperformed the S&P by about 22% since the date he purchased it on the same information. And that can come to light and nobody gives a shit. And that's where I have my problems, Dan.
Welcome to Unqualified Advice. How are you this morning, Sean?
Good morning, Dan. I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for asking. How about yourself? Is it nice and sunny there in Denver?
Just peachy. No, we got cloud cover, and it looks like we might have cloud cover for almost a week. Very strange for here. We're getting some rain in the forecast, which is good because everything is dead or dying.
Well, it's been damp and cloudy here. I went on a cloudy bike ride this morning.
Yeah.
Found a new route today, and actually for anybody in a dense city who wants to go riding and find somewhere where they can pick up a little more speed, may I recommend biking through your local body museum. That's what I like to call cemetery. But I went over to
only you, Sean. Never heard that
one. I went over biking through a really nice cemetery over here by us. It's a rich one, so you got to go to the nice ones.
Well-maintained and all that.
Yeah, well maintained. But it's where Howard Hughes Senior and Junior.
Wow.
The Howard Hughes. Is that how you would do that? Like attorneys general? I don't know.
Well, the general is the title, right? Attorney is the being. I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, but it's. I don't know. I guess there should be Howard Hughes. Howard
Hughes.
I don't know. Howard Hughes's? Yeah. Anyway,
well,
so that was my
we're
morning.
clearly solving the world's problems over here. But anyway, nice ride through a cemetery.
Beautiful. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Actually got some speed up today. Some speeds I hadn't hit in a while. It was nice.
Nice. Well, I'm glad you got some physical activity and some decent weather to do it in. It sounds, yeah, I need some. I think we both do, and growing population of people do, sit and take a couple spare minutes and just have a chat with their favorite chatbot these days and ask some questions that, let's say that you would have never pursued because, one, you don't know how to find the answer, or two, it would have taken so much Google spelunking to get a good answer. It was just one of those write-offs that you never actually went forward with. And for me, one of those areas is, can I make a programmatic system to trade on either Polymarket or call sheet or within the crypto space or something? And I've been spending just small ounces of spare time playing with this idea. And I am arriving at a place where it has been recommended to me that I start a VPS outside of the United States so I can connect to Binance and Polymarket and trade with less regulatory frameworks, shall we say. Do you endorse this idea?
I would advise against that as your attorney, Dan. I feel like that's going to get you into some hot water because, especially if you're doing it with Claude, you're gonna store some of that on GitHub, and there's gonna be some evidence somewhere.
A trail.
That's gonna be a hard trail to clean up. You don't know where it's taking notes and what files and repos that. If you wanted to hide it later, it's going to be very difficult. I think that's really the only reason I would avoid it. But, if you can figure out a way to do it safely, by all means.
Well, I thought maybe if I just got elected senator, I'd be able to.
I think that's very fair. If you're someone like what's his name? I'm sorry.
Tim Moore?
So Dan, you just landed on a point that's been sticking in my mind this week. The rules don't apply to them, do they?
No, they don't.
They really
they write their own rules.
So this week we had a couple of cases of people gaming the system on Polymarket.
A couple of cases found. I would say that this is evidence of thousands of cases. But go ahead.
Actually, you just gave me an idea. I want them to, now we need to have a derivative on this for a prediction on a number of fraudulent cases found. So like over 5, over 10. So there you can insure against this if you're Polymarket.
It's kind of like an argument why short sellers should exist, right? Because they are sort of like the cleaners of the system to a degree, right? Like you need if you know you're going to have grift within the system because the system the system can't be perfect. You want the system to have a self-policing action within it, an immune system, if you will, right? And could that be the beginnings of some sort of immune system on this, or is it just grift on grift?
I mean, then you can game that too, right? But I suppose it would be harder to it would be harder to grift that because you have to actually get caught to actually then say. So it would be self-limiting, is what I'm saying. So maybe that's a good way to kind of somewhat clean. I don't know if it actually cleans it up, but it gives you another.
Well, you're never going to
get
to 0%, right? Like,
no.
Anytime you design any of these things, I think you got to be honest with like where you're going to get to. But like, right now, I think we're looking at like a pretty healthy percentage of grift going on. And if you were able to bring that down to 3 or 4, I think that would be like a total win. Just especially if it was like because of the structure of the system or something.
Yes, that's any system where you're dealing with a large population. You're going to have some attempt at gaming it and some people playing around the edges. That's just the nature of anything. So the
creativity, baby.
The best we can hope to do is, as you said, institute rules that minimize it, and also when it's found, make it possible to do something about. And
yes,
and then enforce said rules also when they are in effect.
You mean we have to do norms enforcement?
Yes, we do. Which is something that's kind of been bugging me about some of the frauds on Polymarket. So one hilarious one that I loved actually was, did you hear about the one in France?
No.
So there's a market on Polymarket for the average or the daily maximum temperature.
Okay.
The daily maximum temperature at the Charles de Gaulle Airport. On 2 or 3 different occasions over the last couple of months, this bet paid off. That it basically somebody bet going to the high side of the temperature with very low odds, and had it pay off a couple of times, a few $100,000, I believe. It wasn't millions of dollars, but tens of thousands of dollars.
I'd take a couple $100K. No, you know what I mean?
And so the French authorities investigated and determined that effectively somebody was going to the temperature sensor at the Charles de Gaulle Airport and just having a hairdryer, a portable hairdryer, spiking it for long enough to trigger the meter to trip, and then collecting winnings. I'm all right with that one, frankly. I think that's just ingenuity. I don't.
And like a bad bet structure or something. It was like that just shouldn't have made it on platform or something.
Yeah. Also, why does that market need to exist? I like the markets that exist to predict something. I guess
that's a lot
more useful,
market, right? People would even argue that's a lot of Wall Street.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, there's a lot of things that don't need to exist that do, for sure. But I like that ingenuity. I think that's but that's to your point earlier.
It doesn't do damage to others.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
It's who's betting on that and like really make like that's just a bunch of people thinking, oh, I'm going to take some, make a stupid 3% profit because there's no way it's going to get above 22C. Yes. Yeah. That one to me, nobody's being harmed. Nobody's being informed of anything ahead of time.
Yeah.
Right. If you go and put in a bunch of
the consequences aren't real.
The temperature's going to spike. It's not that you can go out and actually cause the temperature to spike in reality.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's like, oh, now I'm going to go ahead and just open up a hole in the ozone layer with my new device that will cause the temperature for Charles de Gaulle to increase by 2 degrees Celsius.
That'll happen.
Yeah. Ooh. So okay, fine. They're going after the guy. That's fine. The more probably what's what I'm looking for, consequential one, right? Where maybe somebody could have actually given away information beforehand. Was
or
the case
the existence of the market and the existence of the potential payoff changes actual real world behavior. That's the problem I think you're trying to get at.
That too. It can. I don't think it would in this situation because this guy wasn't in. We're talking about a special forces soldier that had placed a bet that Maduro would be removed from power, would not be in office on Polymarket shortly before the operation to remove him went into play because he knew he was assigned to the operation. He made about $400,000.
What's this guy's rank? How high up was he? To know this ahead of time.
He's a non-commissioned officer, a US Army NCO.
Huh. Okay.
I don't know what his actual rank was. That's all I have in my notes.
I was just curious. Like it seems, seems like colonel material rather than
NCO. Well, non-commissioned officer is somebody that came in as without a college degree, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be. I think that they max out somewhere in the system. I'm not intelligent enough to say where, but I'm sure Claude's going to fact check me that in the show notes. And so go look at that. It's a little feature we have built in. So Claude, make sure I'm right there.
We're a self-correcting apparatus here.
We want to move the show along without looking everything up, but we also want to get it right. Read the show notes; they're important.
This is the new style of responsibility right here, of building in public or whatever you want to call it.
We need at least somebody needs to be holding themselves accountable somewhere. Yeah, that's the way I feel about it. Yeah, so this NCO makes $400,000, and he's arrested and charged with 18 million different crimes. And fair enough, like he shouldn't have done that. Like he should be punished. Yes, that's the system of checks and balances working. They found that this happened. The
You're in a
system
place
worked.
of privilege, privileged information, the rest of it, right?
Yes, but now if your name is Markwayne Mullin and you're a Republican senator from Oklahoma, you can around the same time frame purchase a bunch of Chevron stock, which has outperformed the S&P by about 22% since the date he purchased it on the same information, and that can come to light, and nobody gives a shit, and that's where I have my problems, Dan.
I don't know that nobody gives a shit. I think this is a bipartisan thing. It's executed in a bipartisan way, and I think there's a hate for it within the U.S. populace in a bipartisan way.
That's true.
However, they make their own rule. There's no overseeing body of this body, right?
You just brought up a good point here, Dan. You tell this story to anybody that I actually know, they're all going to be like, yeah, that guy, that's not right. There's nobody that's saying this is the
You
way
can implicate both sides, like Pelosi and Tim Moore or whatever. He seems to be the highest return trader
so far in
Carolina.
2025. Pelosi's previous track record has been pretty good. I mean,
they backed off a little bit, huh?
Yeah, I think she realized it was a little too good.
Yeah,
kind of like, hey, let's take it down a notch. We don't need to kill it every
You're
year.
outperforming every hedge fund in the world. Says something.
It does. Well, one thing I think is funny. There's actually some ETFs out there that track congressional traits. There's the NANC, which tracks the Democrats, all the Democrats, and then there's Cruz, KRUZ, that tracks all the Republicans in Congress.
I was wondering who was going to take the cake on that one.
Yeah. The trailing 12 months returns for those, by the way, Nance plus about 30% versus the S&P plus 25%. Slight little bit of alpha there. That's some congressional alpha you can reliably get just by buying this ETF. Republicans, though, they're not so sharp. They're trailing the market by a good 8 percentage points this year. In the last
I wonder how much that has to do. I would like to deconstruct that. That would be an interesting thing to deconstruct.
And I wonder if you look at like the trailing 3 months, how much that shifts. Because if you look at like year to date, the top performing senators, they're mostly Republicans. Tim Moore, as you mentioned, Michael Guest, Marjorie Taylor Greene,
Rick Scott,
all plus 30%. Then Markwayne Mullin right there with his Markwayne Mullin's trade wasn't in great size. It was only $50,000 I saw reported, which is, so 25% on that, $15,000 to be talked about in this way. Is it really worth it, Mr. Mullin? Really? Think about that. Think about it. Is it really worth it to look this bad?
Is it really worth it?
When
there's zero consequences, yes, it's worth it. I'll take every extra dollar I can get, right?
Yeah, but you're right. You're right. If you're thinking of that, you're absolutely right. I would just think, man, if this comes up and then it just gets run as like, somebody, my
reputation
opponent running this as ads, like this is going to be a terrible ad against him, I hope.
Well, you say that, but like this has been, at least within my bubble, this has been the thing that's hung over Pelosi's head for a long time, and that hasn't mattered.
Exactly. That's why I say it's also not going to matter because we keep electing incumbents. I think my platform, like that I want to follow now, is just no incumbents.
Just you get one shot. Well, it's kind of like your 6 year one-term presidency idea.
Mm-hmm. We like the incumbency of some of this is I think where we
would you change that, like you get lifetime appointments in the judiciary, would you, and you've stated an idea for the executive for the bicameral Congress, how would you think about that?
That's a good question. Certainly some sort of term limits. I think there is some benefit to some level of institutional knowledge, right? You don't want everything refreshed every 4 years.
It gums up the pipes even more if everyone's a freshman.
Yes, but I think you do need to have some upper age limit or some ultimate term limit. Maybe if we said 6 years for president, maybe 12 years ultimately for the bicameral Congress. And why not an age limit on the judiciary, right? We're talking about an age limit on executive. There probably should be, for the same reason. Like, I love my grandma. I love my grandma up until she died, but the last few years she wasn't mentally sharp. If we have people that are on the judiciary till they die, I know they're the sharpest individuals in the world that make it there. They're already way advanced. So like them, degraded 10%, 20% is still probably way better than the average person would be in the judiciary.
And at some point, it's not just raw horsepower. It's also that they are a vessel. There has been power invested in this vessel, and what they do is redirect and grant that power down to, like in a delegated fashion, right, through decision making. Yeah, that's where like It's like, can there be a test? Like, maybe I want to choose the 82-year-old if they're scoring 125 out of 100 on some cognitive test,
point.
right?
That's
But if they score 75 out of 100, then I'm kind of like, well, I think we've reached retirement. Grandpa can't drive anymore.
Yeah, is there a driving test for legislation?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure Mythos can create one for us. Yeah.
Just wait till we get access. We'll be right on it. I feel like that's a ways off for us. Well, maybe not.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know.
It's hard to say. It's hard to say right now.
Yeah, it is. Hopefully, they can lock down all the financial infrastructure and basic infrastructure first, and then we can all play with it.
Exactly. I'm fine with them taking time if it's truly what they market it to be.
Yeah.
Which hopefully it's not. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that.
I think hopefully it is.
Hopefully it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because offensive and defensive are the same. And in large part,
and it's going to be there eventually anyway, right? Why not just pull the Band-Aid off?
It's in the good guy's hands right now, which is where we want it to be.
Yeah, you're right. Right now, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're very right on that. Speaking of pressing the gas pedal, no.
Yeah, tell me.
There's a couple other points I want to circle back to on some of what's going on in congressional trading and what isn't as well. So this was a problem that has been around for quite a while. Like if you look back through history, the trading, Congress has had they have access to inside information many times because they're on committees that are, and also being able to influence which way funding is spent.
Decisions. Yeah.
Yes, and they can make consequential decisions. Say, oh well, we know we're going to direct funding to this corporation, so let me go ahead and get in before that bill passes.
We know we're nuking this airline tomorrow. Let me get a short on. Seriously.
Yes. So back before 2004, when they passed the Stock Act, I think it was 2004. Congressional alpha used to be, annualized alpha versus the market used to be about 10%. Since that, it actually has gone down. So the Stock Act, for those that don't know, requires that basically Congress people report their trades with certain stipulations, and then if they don't report it, they can be penalized and prosecuted.
So it's a data collection apparatus.
Yes, it's basically saying, hey, we're watching you. I think is the
creating transparency.
Is where you're getting
step one
benefit that has happened, because since that time, since the time of the Stock Act implementation, we're really seeing closer to a 0% alpha from overall Congress overall as a large mass, not much, but regardless of the time era, there's the top decile of Congress that trades at about plus 30%.
Yeah. I mean, so
which is impressive. That's over every era.
Yeah, well, I mean,
because not every era was producing returns where that would have been like, you would be like, what? The market went up 0%. How were you producing 30? I guess that's alpha versus the market, though. So the market could have been gone down 15, and they're up 15. So anyway, so yeah, there's still some of this going on, regardless. And
well, what I think you just said was interesting. Even in the professional investment industry is probably a little bit like this, in the sense that if you pool all the numbers together, the alpha trends toward 0, but if you pick the top decile, they're star performers.
Mm-hmm. And so how is this different than they're either on the good committees or they're just better stock pickers. I don't know which.
Yeah. I think that data says something. I don't know exactly what it says, but it says something.
Yeah,
about
maybe I'll
having
see
an opinion on this.
I wonder if it's possible to parse out. Probably not. But like what the top performers by era, like what their actual trades were, and then relate that to what committees they were in. Yeah, that would be an interesting little deep dive. Maybe I can get the robot to do that this week.
Speaking of me becoming a senator, let me know, and I'll know exactly which committees I'm trying to get on.
Exactly.
Man, I've said a lot of things on this podcast right now that make me sound really incriminated, and that's joking. Joking. Let's just be clear.
No, at least then we'll know which senators to go and actually follow, right? So we can then say, okay, since they're reporting it, then we're going to follow the ones that are on these committees, and then that's your alpha.
That is your alpha, if it's committee driven.
Yes, but the problem with the reporting, though, so there's a rash of late reports that happen since 2014. It's been going up every year from single digits. Now we're seeing about 50 trades a year that aren't reported on time. So, a few hundred overall that have been that have happened. The proposed fine for this is $200.
My God.
They're penalizing
Okay.
Congress $200 for an infraction. They're not even
Speeding
collecting that.
tickets cost more than that these days.
And there have been absolutely zero prosecutions on these 200 plus incidents.
Yeah,
since
there's
then.
no teeth.
So yeah, there's no teeth.
Well,
to it.
who decides the enforcement? Do they decide the enforcement?
I don't know. I'm gonna have to look into
Who's
that.
the enforcing body? I think that because that's another one of those, like, you have to separate these things, otherwise there's no incentive. Self-policing is.
Also, I would imagine and so the act is just requiring their reporting. So if they're late in reporting, then
Okay, so it's a system, not like a judgment.
Yeah, so it's not like
well,
they can't trade on information. It's just like you have to report it, and if you don't, you're late. And then what? I guess what's even the teeth of the system?
There needs to be 2 zeros added to that penalty. They're all clearly rich enough.
3 zeros.
3? You're going to go for $200K?
Yes.
Fair. I'm not stopping you.
And then also, if you're going to do it, make it a really freaking good trade. Like you got to make at least $200K to make it profitable, but still, go for it.
It's like a management fee.
Yeah.
You got to pay the taxpayer. Yeah.
And then we watch all the public filings and see who's betting enough size that $200K would not be an issue, and we know that's the good bet.
More alpha.
More alpha. More alpha for us.
Well, yeah. I mean, if they're elected by the people, then they should be sharing it with the people. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Precisely. It really, ultimately, I feel they should be disallowed from single stock ownership, but I don't think that will ever happen at this point.
Yeah, or like everything would have to be moved into a trust, and then you don't have
what they had
decision-making
going in could be
capability.
moved into, yeah. Agreed. There has to be some better air gap.
Like if going in that 80% of your retirement is in Exxon, then you could conceivably still try to make decisions that help Exxon, but you're not ever going to disentangle all of this, and at some point you're going to disincentivize everyone that you actually want in those seats from getting in those seats, right?
And that's a great counter argument, because there is something. Is it a problem if you're a CEO of a company and you say, I'm going to step back and I'm going to go lead this country? Well, of course you're going to be naturally inclined to make decisions that are going to benefit your former company anyway.
In part because you understand it, or you understand your industry so deeply, and you think it's important, because otherwise, why would you have spent your whole? It's like some of this isn't like character flaw necessarily.
You're right. It's just human psyche, our natural proclivities to behave in certain ways, and it's not ignoble. It's not necessarily somebody being a bad actor either.
Right.
It's or acting with malfeasance. It's
nice word selection there. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like it.
Ignoble
is not used enough. I'm gonna walk down the street. You, sir, are ignoble. I think people should call it out.
My favorite use of the word ignoble was actually at the Olive Garden. We were there having dinner, and back in high school.
Okay.
Because we were rich and we could afford to go to the Olive Garden.
Yeah.
My girlfriend at the time, the guy was putting, shredding the Parmesan cheese on top of her fettuccine Alfredo, and she's like, "Keep it going." He's like, "How much do you want?" She's like, "I'm trying to eat as much cheese as I possibly can today." And he said, "That's not an ignoble pursuit." And I was just. Since then, I always try to drop ignoble more often. Yeah, but I rarely do.
I love it when there's like this moment in life where you can always track back. You're like, this word that you like, and you can track it back to this particular moment when it entered your, You taught me the word esoteric, and it stuck with me ever since.
Good. I'm glad I taught somebody something. First time for everything.
Oh man! All right, so obviously the Stock Act doesn't have actual teeth. The penalty essentially is it's not even a speed bump. It's like it's a joke.
Again, I think the importance here is the monitoring, and like if you actually think about the wisdom of how it was set up, and I'm there is a shift in the median performance of the body since it went into effect, so that it had an impact.
I think that's not really
say it's ineffective entirely. Yeah. It just needs further possible refinement.
Well, this is how we should be trying. This should be a goal of ours, right? To be iterative rather than like, I am creating this iconoclastic legislation that does X, Y, Z, and you know what I mean? Like, just do some building blocks with sunset rules and be strategic.
It's like Doge is sunsetting here in a few months after.
We were talking about sunsetting last episode, right? Like, and Now that should just be part of the rule sets. Like everything you pass has to have a sunset on it, and you always can renew as is or whatever. And I think it's quite brilliant. Slash, there's a better word.
Poetic almost.
Poetic?
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that. Like the start, it's really this is exemplary, right? It almost doesn't matter what side of the political situation you're on. This is exemplary of why sunsetting is good. Because I think a lot of people, like I said, got behind the idea of Doge, and then the way it was implemented was complete trash. And
It lost a lot of public favor. Dan, you and I were even a little optimistic about, hey, maybe there's something here, maybe.
Because I still think there is, not under the,
but not the way they went about it.
Yes.
Not the way it was, not the way it was approached and attacked. And that might be due to other things within the structure of our rules and regulations that prevent it to be able to be effective in that way. But it definitely, I haven't heard anybody say anything positive about it. And basically since a month
it seems like
they
it got
started
swept
working
under the rug and has stopped, which is all the more, again, sunset. Does this invalidate the idea? No, it invalidates how it was practiced, right? So if you want another swing at the ball, let's go. But there will be a sunset attached to it again, right? And if we like where it's going and the tumult is difficult, but people are weathering it and think it's, producing long-term results, hopefully we can have a governing body that can stomach that and, re-up. That's me being optimistic, probably.
That's what you have to be, though.
I agree.
Otherwise, you'll never do anything.
Yes.
Got to be optimistic. Got to be.
You say it so plainly.
Have to be.
Yeah.
Absolutely have to be.
Read David Deutsch's Beginning to Infinity if you're not. It helps. That's
a hell of a dense book. It's a good read, though. It's a good one.
Yeah, maybe there's a Cliff Notes version or something like that.
The description of the Infinity Hotel from that is, for those that are interested, maybe you can just find a
synopsis or
synopsis of that would be, maybe I'll find a link and put it in the show notes if something exists. I think that's a really interesting concept, and I hadn't thought of infinity in that way. Clarified something in my mind when I read it. I don't know what now. I can't put it into description because it's infinite, but it helped me visualize it, which is also impossible because it's infinite. So there you go.
I don't know what we just learned.
Read David Deutsch. He's better at explaining it than I am. That's all I can say.
He is really, yes. I follow him on Twitter and I'm just like totally wrapped. Like
I don't follow him. That's a good follow. I'll have to add that.
Do it and turn on notifications. Like he is, he's on top of it in terms of clear thinking and being able to explain himself. Like he's out on high, but then also like I'm sitting here going, oh, I can understand that. Either
I love that.
I ain't so dumb.
I love it.
Or he's brilliant.
I love it when somebody is so brilliant that they see something that is also, if it's something should have been staring us all in the face. Like Rory Sutherland does that really well. He pulls something that you should have been staring you in the face, like, oh my God. And then he puts it so simply, and it's like
a unique genius.
Yeah. I want him to write another book.
Me too. I want Alchemy again. I mean, I should just reread Alchemy. It was still, it's not like just reread it. What's next, Sean?
There was something else I was going to mention, but I forget what it was.
On the subject, on stock?
No.
Stock actor.
Something else. It was, I had a pivot, but I forget what. Well, here we are.
Let me look through my...
I remember.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about Doge, and in the back of my mind, I got to thinking about Elon Musk.
Yes. Okay.
And so there's been some... We're coming up on a crucial date, Dan. 9th.
Okay.
6/9. Okay. What better date for an IPO of SpaceX than...
Are you serious? Yeah, you're right. That he would do that.
He would. Do you think that's the date? And more importantly, are you buying Tesla before or after the SpaceX IPO for the eventual merger?
Can I just buy leaps?
That's not a bad idea. That's actually a really good, efficient way to play that. So I was listening to and reading Matt Levine this week, and then listening to his podcast, but they were talking about all the shenanigans that Elon's pulled in the past. And
Lots of financial engineering, yeah.
And he wants to run Tesla in a way where he's in control.
Yeah,
he can't do that because he doesn't have dual class voting. There's not dual class shares like you have in, where Zuckerberg controlled Facebook because of the dual class shares.
I see exactly where you're going.
But they are setting up X voting shares in the SpaceX IPO. Okay. So they can then merge Tesla with SpaceX to make the one company that is building all the robots and using all the AI. Yeah, stock ticker X. No, that's already taken by US Steel. It can't.
That's true.
Can't be X.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I used to.
Yeah.
That was a ticker that I dealt with daily for a long time.
Yeah. X2, XX.
There's no numbers.
Is Dos Equis traded?
The most interesting man or whatever.
Most interesting ticker in the world. Yeah, so it's going to happen. It has to. I don't know when, but my guess is got to be. All right, so everybody's saying June.
Leap before this publishes.
Everybody's saying June for the SpaceX IPO. So then a few months later, they're going to go ahead and finish the Cursor acquisition because they couldn't buy Cursor before because of all the changes they would have to make to the disclosures. But they're buying Cursor, which is, for those who aren't aware, an AI coding company who makes actually a pretty nice tool that uses different models to write code. But SpaceX built this giant data center that they don't really have any use for because Grok isn't that popular. So they need something to fill it. So they're going to, acquire Cursor after the IPO. And then it's only a matter of time before you have a giant data center. You know what needs a lot of data processing? Full self-driving. It's just a matter of time. And then he can control it all. I mean, so I say
his visions have always been big. And I think you're playing
2028 that goes down.
Full enveloped.
That's my guess. So that'll end up in our predictions file. And in a couple of years, we can see if I was close.
I like it. It fits the mold more than anything.
Tesla is trading at 138 times forward earnings.
No, it's terribly overpriced.
Yeah. There's not the value there. Like they have to. I mean, some of that's an Elon premium, right? Because it's the only way people can actually buy an Elon company. So you would expect to see that possibly Tesla shares.
People are emotionally attached
drop.
to it. I know people personally whose financial fortunes have been changed by that stock, and so now they're like dogmatic about it.
I could never trust it, and here I am with my financial fortunes not changed by that stock, and that's what sucks.
I bought a bunch of it. And then I got scared out of it by Josh Wolf. And then I would have bought 3 of these houses if I would have just hung on to it.
I know. Some of the stupid things we do, Dan, because we just can't see the stupidity to the trees. I don't know.
The stupidity for the trees. Yeah.
Anyway, so that's my prediction. I just that occurred to me, and I had to say it here, so that way in a couple of years we can come back and.
You're actually saying quite clearly. I think. I don't know if you're. Clearly we don't know if you'll be right or not. But I think in terms of mapping not only the past onto the future, but also playing into the character. I think
it's going to trade on the Texas Stock Exchange, of course, right?
Whatever, dude. I don't know.
Equities in Dallas.
Yeah.
3 people. We have maybe 100 listeners. Maybe one of them laughed at that. Maybe if we're lucky.
I'm enjoying myself. This is really all that matters.
Same here, Dan. Same here.
Okay, so I don't know. Given what we've talked about today, is there anything I guess we talked about it a little bit. Is there anything to fix? If the Stock Act, for example, I don't have to go all the way back there, but I guess I am. The Stock Act created some transparency, created a rules system for recording and reporting. Mm-hmm. What is the next step there? Is it just leave it there and create more openness so that the United States citizen can participate alongside Congress and therefore eat away some of their alpha, because that's how alpha gets eaten away? Is once the secret?
I think that's the reporting that needs to happen, right? And so then when you have these reporting gaps, they need to actually have teeth. In the first fix is making the act work as it's designed and giving it enough teeth. When you violate what they have, say, hey, we're going to not change anything drastically. You might get this through Congress. We're just going to add a few zeros onto the end of the fine, and we're actually going to enforce it, y'all. And here's how that's going to be happening, setting up a proper mechanism with proper oversight. I also have to imagine there's hundreds of members of Congress, right? Whoever's looking at these things, it might have to be a big a team, because there's thousands of possible trades.
Mythos.
True. Honestly, yeah. In the future, a lot of this will be easier automated, because it's going to be more, in theory, in a database where you just see it.
Yeah.
Or can see it. So
you have this. Yeah, you can have a neutral arbiter built in.
What would you change? I mean, is there any tweaks you have in mind?
I mean, I guess I was coming at it originally before discussing this with you from a much more, I don't know, call a spade, much more ideological stance. I just think I was with you on disallowing it. You've got to park all this stuff in a trust and hand it over to an executor or whatever for the. Yeah,
I would have said that before we talked today too, and now I'm not so sure. That's exactly the only solution. As I've gamed it out in my head.
And I think this transparency angle of putting more surface area out into the system such that the efficiencies and inefficiencies of the system are exposed to this privileged position, or the privileged position is exposed to the efficiencies and inefficiencies of the system. Thereby, they play by the same rules as the rest of us. You went with this. I had no idea these two ETFs existed, and you said it, and I'm like, oh my god, this is even more trash. And now I've changed my mind, and I'm thinking like this is exactly what should have happened.
Honestly, right? At least it's putting some sunlight on it. So, if the voters gave a shit,
democratizing it,
they could have voted Pelosi out.
Yes,
but the people in her district apparently don't give a shit because it has been discussed. Like this is not a thing that we don't know about.
It's not a secret at all.
No incumbents. That's the T-shirt I want. No incumbents. 2020X.
Let's get some unqualified advice swag going.
Yeah.
No incumbents on the back. Yeah.
No incumbents. We need a little rich dentist plushie and a scapegoat. Those are my favorite characters so far.
We could.
The Chaos Monkey.
We're building something.
Another one.
The Chaos Monkey. I forgot about him. Yeah. Well, how is the Chaos Monkey doing?
Well, we said we were embracing it, and it's been chaotic. So I think the Chaos Monkey has been with us,
executing
in full since we first discussed him back in 2024.
I agree with you.
Her, I guess it doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Non-binary monkey for all I care. That would make more sense for a Chaos Monkey, really.
Yeah, it kind of would have.
Well, Dan, it's been a pretty good discussion around these topics here today. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
I think I maybe want to plant a seed here about something that we're going to discuss in the future, because
let's do that. Yeah,
we've both, John and I have both been toying around with like what are the implications of AI on investing, kind of generally, like, but also the pipes, the processes, the things that are underlying the very large and complicated system that is investment in this country. And a note that I wrote down last night was we're looking at a probabilistic machine for deterministic outcomes, because I was trying to wrestle with like what sets Rintech apart. And I'm not so sure that they have this probabilistic machine built. I think they have a deterministic machine built. And now with LLMs, we have what amounts to a probabilistic machine, right? Am I not mapping that correctly? And I think there
like
might
that
this
angle
bifurcation within this finding alpha system. And I don't think it's just two paths. I think there's three, which is purely probabilistic, purely deterministic, and then this, what I think will probably, of course, be the winner, is some sort of hybrid approach of inside the process, the probabilistic process runs first and then runs into the deterministic machine, or vice versa. I don't know.
I like this idea. And where I want us to start when we talk about this in that episode is we need a little flow chart of what we mean when we say probabilistic versus deterministic. So I can have it clear in my head, because I think I got you, but I want to make sure I understand. So Dan, I love this idea, because I think the way AI is going to change the way finance works, it already really has. It really, 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 really already has. Something like, I think 59% of firms currently are like truly algorithm.
Yeah, but that's not AI.
Right? That's not AI, but it plays so into the then, okay, now we have these algorithms that then, I'm just saying, you're already primed for it, right? That's what I'm saying.
Well, yes, because that algo, which is deterministic, is legible to the probabilistic machine. And before, the probabilistic machine was limited to humans. Now we have a machine that is probabilistic. So what happens when I take Mythos and say, look at this algo. This is what it does. This is what I want. Can you improve it? What happens to that algorithm? And then because of that algorithm change that is used by 74% of all hedge funds to trade in dark pools, what does that change to the dark pool? And you know what I mean? Like there's this set of effects that cascade through the system. And I'm not even talking about high frequency trading or Citadel or market makers. I'm just talking, just some hedge funds that would look at themselves as not technology driven firms.
Yeah. I will also say, though, a lot of the deterministic natures of the algorithms that you're looking at were based off of probabilistic steady.
Yeah.
So like I'm thinking like Cliff Asness at AQR.
Lots of them
AQR
over there.
Great. A great firm in terms of they publish a lot of analysis and free content. You can just go look them up and read a bunch about quantitative trading and machine learning.
Or just listen to him and Jim O'Shaughnessy talk. It's great.
Yeah, just listen to those two. Find those two on Jim O'Shaughnessy's podcast and listen to it, because it's great if you're into this sort of thing.
Yeah.
But as he actually described, I think on the last episode they were on, they have this machine learning system at AQR that it will put out a number and it'll say, we're going to watch this factor, and it can't tell you why.
Yes.
And you can't intuit why, but that's from probabilistic study, I think is my understanding. So that's what I'm saying. So like you then get probabilistic study that drives the deterministic outcome. Like then a deterministic outcome say, okay, based on the probabilities, because of we've done this, we know that these are the bands of how these things correlate and possibly interact. Then we make this deterministic decision. So they're hand in hand, and this is why we need to, again, for my own sake, map this out a little bit more. Do a study, and I need to go do a little reading and some pod listening. But yeah, so on that front though, are there any particular sources of information that you're gonna seek out yourself?
Well, that's an excellent question,
because I'm gonna copy you if so.
Yeah, so many of these firms are secretive. I don't think Citadel or Jane Street really share stuff. I could be wrong on that. Like, I haven't looked. So I would probably start with some of the big banner names, in part because their recruiting has to be so intense to get the best talent that they have to share something, at least flavors of the ability to attract the talent that they need in-house, right? So Jane Street, I think, just reported like 40 billion in profits or something. Is this good for the world? I'm not sure, but like they would be at the forefront of at least, well, hoovering up the talent. And I think there's got to be communication around, there's got to be something to mine there for that. Then I would probably look at if there's anything that Google Cloud has published, because they have for years, including my time in the industry, have pushed very hard to get into financial services. And I think they have succeeded. They work closely with Citadel. They work closely with, oh my gosh, it just left my brain, somebody else. The CME, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. So looking at the exchanges would be another place, because it's a pivot point. It's where things come in and out. What else? Yeah, there's probably two people I will ping in my network.
Share any reading advice that you have on your way, and we'll come fresh with that for a future episode.
Do you have any? Where else are you going to go? You're going to stuff in 1,500 money stuff articles and see what he said in the past?
That's what I was going to go start looking through some old Matt Levine posts. That's a very good place to start. Also, as I mentioned, AQR I think probably has some good information here to mine and bring to
University
the discussion.
of Chicago probably has published things as well. That's where Cliff came out of.
Yes, the University of Chicago has published many things, I know, but whether it's relevant, we'll see. No, I'm sure they have. Yeah, that's the problem. Is there's probably too much information out there on anything.
It's hard to sift.
It's hard to filter through and find out what's actually truly relevant on any.
Well, and what's practicable. I think asking yourself what's practicable. It's like this academic stuff only gets.
Yeah. So what do you have to get out of this kind of line of thought? Is are you trying to understand how to use any of these ideas yourself, or understanding what's going to change in the world and what,
and how expensive are they to run, right? Like if I can only find 2% alpha over buying VOO, right? Like if that's what I conclude from my own cognitive ability tied in with these tools, for example, I don't know. And instead you have to have a hive mind like Jane Street in order to succeed. I don't know. Like, I guess the other question I have is like, what does this do selfishly? How can I employ this? Like if you and I were to pull all this together.
You want to see the one person hedge fund. What does the one person hedge fund look like?
Yeah, people keep talking about this $1 billion one person company. I like this one person hedge fund. I want to be able to.
What's it going to take to build that?
I want to throw 25 grand into a pot, and then by next year it's 1.5 million, and then by the next year it's whatever, and then I just pull that gas pedal back a little bit and cruise.
Okay. We have some topics we can dive through then. I think. There's
can we do that?
No,
can we create the
but we can at least talk about it.
Yeah, I think we can. I opened with
you can try. Here's the thing: there's going to be thousands of people trying. One person's going to succeed. It might be one of us if we just try.
Yeah. It's guaranteed not succeed if you don't try. What is that, Wayne Gretzky? No?
Yeah,
you miss 100% of the shots you don't. All right. Well, we got some homework, Sean.
We do. I look forward to knocking that out. Well, shall we go get to it and go get to our studies, Dan?
Yeah, I think so. We are the weird ones because this is what we choose to do with our weekend.
It is. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody, to another episode of Unqualified Advice. All leave you with this. Go build something.
See y'all.